That's all.
Okay.
Yeah, started.
Yeah.
Prabhu, you're on record.
All this recorded everything.
We already recorded all that.
Yeah.
It was also Bhagavatam class.
Between person Bhagavad.
Start.
Oh, Prabhu.
Okay.
This is like eating.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tado Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishnaprasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschasya Deshatarane Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhyev cha Patidanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So welcome to our weekly study on Srimad Bhagavatam Bhakti Vaibhav studies. And today we are on Srimad Bhagavatam third canto, titled Status Quo. And then we are in chapter 4. Vidura approaches Maitreya. And chapter 4 contains 36 verses. So it contains 3 sections. So we are in the third section, verses 24 to 36. So this section, His Grace Gurujana Prabhu, in the Unveiling Lotus Feet, he gives the title Uddhava departs Badrikashrama and Vidura lives to find Maitreya Muni. So that's the title for this section. So to give a little context, so we know the context in which Bhagavatam is spoken, conversation between the sages of Naimisharanya, headed by Shaunaka Rishi and Sutta Goswami. And Sutta Goswami narrates on what he heard from Sukadeva Goswami. So the conversation, inside conversation. And then after Sukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj inquires about what are the duties of a person who is about to die, what he should remember, what he should chant. And for that he tells about Krishna, and then he tells about the entire process of creation. So that's the second canto, the cosmic manifestation. So after completing the second canto, in the end, Shaunaka Rishi asks, so in between he talks, Sukadeva Goswami talks, so Sutta Goswami talks about Vidura. And then he asks more question, what did Vidura do afterwards? Please elaborate on Vidura's activities. He asks that question in the end of the second canto. And then again, Sutta Goswami tells, based on what Sukadeva Goswami spoke to Parikshit about Vidura, he narrates that Vidura travels and finally comes to Prabhasha Kshetra. Not Prabhasha Kshetra. He talks about his conversation between Uddhava and Vidura, and Uddhava quotes, narrates the conversation, what happened actually. And then he talks about how he met the Lord in Prabhasha Kshetra. And then Lord, how he unmade his pastimes. And then he elaborates what happened to all the Kurus. And talks about the Vrishnish and the Yadus, and then Lord's desire to wind his pastimes. So that's what he narrates. So in that conversation, when Uddhava speaks, Lord Krishna speaks to Uddhava, At that time, Maitreya Muni also nearby, and he is also a great devotee, but he is mostly more like he is not a pure devotee until that point of time. But he is sincere in his path, so he gets association of Uddhava and Krishna. He directly receives the message. He listens to the conversation between Uddhava and Lord Shri Krishna. And then he listens to that message, and then later Vidura asks this question. Vidura asks about all his relatives and Yadus and Krishna and all of them. Uddhava talks about it, and then at that time Vidura sees that Uddhava is a seen, even though he's like his son. Vidura is much older compared to Uddhava, but Uddhava is uh, but senior in terms of devotional service. That's what he sees because he is a personal servant of Krishna. So he is enlightened directly by Krishna. He is an advanced devotee, more qualified than me. Hence he approaches Uddhava to enlighten him about the Atma Tattva, the self-knowledge, and in connection to Krishna. But we are going to see that today. And Uddhava actually tells that out of etiquette is that you should approach Maitreya Muni for that knowledge. But still they talk about Krishna and Krishna's pastimes. But about the Atma Tattva knowledge, when he asked for, he said you should approach Maitreya Muni. He delegates that responsibility to Maitreya Muni because we're going to see that verses today. So that's the context in which we are seeing these verses. So I think last time, like Nitya Gauranga Prabhu, I think covered till verse 23. So verse 24 to 36 we are going to cover. So as you mentioned, this is based on teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So before we start on this study, we seek the blessings of the Guru Gauranga and all the Samut Vaishnavas. Please forgive us for any of our inability to present this message properly. So the shortcoming is with me, not with the message. And then this is the chapter 4. So chapter 4 contains 3 sections. The first section is Uddhava meets Krishna, who is preparing for his own departure. So that contains 2 sections, disappearance of Yadus. Then Lord at his final moment meets Uddhava. So these are the 2 subsections of this first section. And then second section is Maitreya Muni arrives and Krishna instructs Uddhava. So verse 9 is Maitreya Muni arrives. Verse 10 to 13 is Lord reciprocates more intimately with Uddhava. And overwhelmed Uddhava glorifies and prays to the Lord. That's verse 14 to 18. And Uddhava decides to execute Lord's instruction. That is verse 19 to 22. And then we are in this third section. The third section is Uddhava departs for Badrikashrama and Vidura leaves to find Maitreya Muni. Verse 23 to 25, Vidura seeks spiritual knowledge from Uddhava. Verse 26 to 27, overwhelmed Uddhava follows perfect etiquette of spirituality. And then verses 28 to 32, Uddhava's special role after the disappearance of the Lord. And then Vidura's enlightened by Uddhava and further journey. That is verse 33 to 36. These are the 4 subsections of this third section of the verses 33 to 20, 23 to 36. Actually, Gurujana Prabhu divides 23 is part of the second section. I put it here because if you see it in terms of logical sequence, 23 belongs to here, but I don't know there might be a reason why Gurujana Prabhu put it on 23. So I just put it here. So that's my mental speculation. So please forgive me if I'm wrong. So not mental speculation. I also found some other study notes. In some other study note, it was like that. So I don't want to use the word mental speculation. So in some other study notes, it was classified with 23 is part of the third section. So the third section, Uddhava departs Badrikashrama and Vidura leaves to find Maitreya Muni. As I mentioned, verse 23 to 24, Vidura seeks spiritual knowledge from Uddhava. 26 to 27, overwhelmed Uddhava follows perfect etiquette. What is that perfect etiquette? We are going to see because he doesn't want to address the request of Vidura by God because he wanted to give that responsibility to the elder person who is nearby to Maitreya Muni. That's the perfect etiquette. Prabhupada actually elaborates quite a bit on this perfect etiquette. And then Uddhava's special role after departure of the Lord, disappearance of the Lord. That's verse 28 to 32. So Lord Shri Krishna appoints Uddhava. He doesn't take Uddhava along with him back to spiritual world. So that we are going to see why he keeps Uddhava in the material world and he gives specific role for him to do in his absence. So that's verse 28 to 32. And then 33 to 36, Vidura's enlightenment from Uddhava, the association of Uddhava, what happens, it makes him more spiritually advanced. And then Uddhava leaves to Badrigashrama. And then after that, Vidura continues his journey from bank of Yamuna to he goes to uh, uh, bank of Ganges, where he wants to meet Maitreya Muni. So these are the 4 sections. So verse 23, I will just read the translation. So the way uh, I put the translation is that before putting the translation, I put a small context. So this is what I learned from a study notes I just got. So before each translation, there's a context in which this verse is spoken is given. So this verse, Sukadeva Goswami explains Vidura's state after hearing from Uddhava. So that's the state. That's 23 verse 23. Sukadeva Goswami said, after hearing from Uddhava all about the annihilation of his friends and relatives, the learned Vidura pacified his overwhelming bereavement by dint of his transcendental knowledge. So in this purport, actually there are 2 things. So there is a lesson for us to learn. That's what Prabhupada quotes in this purport. As it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, due to our long association with bodily relationships, bereavement on the account of annihilation of friends and relatives is not at all astonishing. Because we are been in this material world, we have been conditioned in this material world to make us to think that we are this body. Hence, anything which is connected to our body, we are generally attached. Hence, when somebody departs, friends and relatives, it's a natural thing for the living entity to go through this anguish because of our condition. Even though that is not the state, that is not true. Because of its condition, long association with the material energy, this happens. This is not something astonishing. Because of its conditioned state, it goes through that. So how Prabhupada tells how to overcome such a thing based on transcendental knowledge, one has to understand. What is the transcendental knowledge? Verses 211 to 230. Krishna speaks in Bhagavad Gita. That is why whenever somebody departs, especially we go and read these verses 211 to 230. So Harivilas Prabhu reads those verses, these 20 verses. Whenever we go to some ceremony of somebody's departing or somebody ancestors ceremony, whatever we do, so Harivilas Prabhu always reads that verses 21 to verse 11 to verse 30. So that gives the knowledge of the soul, the science of the soul, the Atma Tattva. So that knowledge will help us to come out of this agreement. We can come out of this difficulty, that we can understand that we are not this body, we are spirit, soul. The soul is going to continue its journey. So that's how one can overcome this difficulty. So in the next point, Prabhupada mentions in that purport is advancement by association. The talks between Uddhava and Vidura on the topic of Krishna began at sunset, and Vidura was now further advanced in knowledge due to his association with Uddhava. So the conversation between Uddhava and Vidura started sometime in the evening. And then in this conversation, because of association is Uddhava, Uddhava is more senior in terms of spirituality, more advanced devotee, because he get to serve Lord Krishna personally. So by that association, Uddhava is already enlightened person, but he become more advanced spiritually. So when we have to understand the lesson also from here is that we should never give up the association. We might be practicing devotional service for a long time, but doesn't mean that okay, I'm fine, I can fly my own plane. So Gaurang Prabhu mentioned in one of the lectures, so it doesn't matter who you are, you could be a sannyasi, you could be a guru, but still you have to seek association. That's why Prabhupada set up a system called Governing Body Commission. So we should be always working under direction of authority. In the absence of Prabhupada, Prabhupada created governing body. He created just not one person, he created a body of devotees. So even the spiritual master within ISKCON, they are always working under the authority of the GBC. So that actually sometimes people have misunderstanding.
Yeah.
My guru's words are final. There is nothing beyond that.
Yeah.
That is true. That is absolutely right. But we have to also understand the bigger picture. The guru is also working under the context of an organization. So that is the difference between any other spiritual organization and ISKCON. This have been never done in the history before. Prabhupada, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted to do that. But he gave this instruction to his disciples to form a governing body commission, but they never fulfilled that vision. So Srila Prabhupada took that instruction and he executed. When he was on the planet itself, he formed a governing body commission. And then Prabhupada used to be also one of the governing, even though he was the chair of the governing body commission, he will wait for all the administrative decision, he will let the GPC to make the decision.
Yeah.
He said, you guys take care of the administration. I don't want to do, I want to focus on translation. So you guys should take care of it. Like that, Prabhupada had delegated the authority to GPC. So sometimes people also give this misinterpretation, this GPC is not correct, this thing, that thing. So any devotee in ISKCON, we should know that this is the structure Prabhupada set up. Hence, everybody should be working under guidance. Everybody should be seeking association. So that's the lesson from this verse. Do we want to go through recite the verses or just translation? Because there are 13, 14
Faster.
verses are there.
Faster
14
is
verses.
better.
Yeah.
Because otherwise.
So again, this verse, next verse, verse 24. So the context is Vidura thought of questioning Uddhava. That's what actually Sukadeva Goswami tells. While Uddhava, the chief and most confidential amongst devotees of the Lord, the chief and most confidential among the devotees of the Lord. Uddhava is the head of all the devotees who are serving Krishna personally in Dwarka. He is the chief of all the servants. Was going away, and Vidura in affection and confidence questioned him. So in this verses, in this purport, Prabhupada actually brings few points. This verse demonstrates courteous dealings between the two devotees. Whenever devotees meet, one should understand that the other person is a devotee of the Lord. We should hear from him about the message of Krishna. We should discuss about the pastimes of Krishna with him. He could be junior in age, but he could be very advanced spiritually. Hence, we should not discriminate. We should be always talking about Krishna. So this is the courteous dealings between devotees. Vidura's confidence about Uddhava's position considered him as a chief of all the devotees. Vidura considered Uddhava as the chief of all the devotees in Dwarka. Because of that, he is much advanced in devotional service, although junior in age. So hence, we should not actually discriminate devotees by age. Of course, we should give respect based on age, right? Like in the culture of respect, Gaurang Prabhu gave a class seminar. So there are different ways we should respect living entities. We should always respect all the living entities. But for a conditioned living entity, this false ego comes into play. At the time, at least they should use the intelligence. There is a set of culture codes have been set up in Vedic culture. One should give respects to the parents. One should give respects to elders. One should give respects to people who are socially prominent. One should give respect to priests. One should give respect to brahmanas. One should give respect to devotees. Like that, there's whole set of culture code have been set up in Vedic culture. So even though the false ego might come up with all kind of reasons why I should not respect, because Krishna says all the living entities should be respected. One should respect all the living entities all the time. But even then, there are more details Vedic culture gives how to respect different living entities according to their position. One of the way of respecting others is by age. But we should not understand there is more than age. There's a superseding principle. Somebody could be more advanced in devotional service. So age should not be a consideration in receiving the knowledge. The next verse, Vidura addresses the true interest of Lord servants like Uddhava. He asks this, please give me the knowledge of Krishna. And then he talks about why he understands the position of Uddhava. And then he tells the nature of the devotees. Vidura said, O Uddhava, because the servants of Vishnu, the Lord, wander in the interest of serving others, it is quite fit that you kindly describe the self-knowledge with which you have been enlightened by the Lord himself. He asks the question. Because always the Vaishnavas, the devotees of the Lord, they travel all over the world. What? To disseminate the knowledge of the self. To make people enlightened that who they are. They are not this body, they are spirit soul. And then they say that not only they don't stop there. What is the connection between the spirit soul and the super soul? They enlightened the living entities with their Atma Tattva in connection to Krishna. Prabhupada tells the only interest of Lord servant is, I'm just directly quoting the purport, the servants of the Lord are actually the servants of the society. They have no interest in human society other than to enlighten it in transcendental knowledge. They have no other duty. They are not interested in anything else except enlightening the conditioned living entity. They might do so many other kind of activities, but the motivation behind all those activities are to bring people to this level of making them to understand that they are not this body. What knowledge they impart? The knowledge of the relationship of the living being with the Supreme Lord, the activities in that transcendental relationship, and the ultimate goal of human life. Right? That is what Srimad Bhagavatam is. The knowledge of the self in connection to the super soul or the Bhagavan, and then the activities between the living entities, the liberated living entities, and the Lord, and then what is the ultimate goal of life. That's what Srimad Bhagavatam is. And they distribute to deserving candidates. Actually, when the devotees, they go out and preach, right? Even the Uttam Adhikari comes to the level of Madhyam Adhikari, because Madhyam Adhikari can only discriminate who's qualified, who's not qualified. That is also they discriminate specifically to find out somebody is qualified or not qualified based on whether somebody is envious or not envious. Why they discriminate? That is also for the welfare of the living entity. Without discrimination, if they talk about Krishna, an envious living entity, they will become further envious. To make them advanced in spiritual knowledge, they don't give the knowledge of Krishna. Sometimes withholding the knowledge of Krishna from an envious living entity is a service to that living entity. They are making advancement in some other ways by creating an opportunity for them to come to level of Krishna. So a person who knows the science of Krishna is factually a bona fide spiritual master. They distribute knowledge to qualified people. Only way to achieve knowledge is in the disciplic succession and not by imperfect speculation. Prabhupada calls out this point very clearly, that the knowledge has to come from disciplic succession. As a practicing devotee, as a sadhakas, as part of our sadhana, we also do preaching. So in the preaching, generally, how we should preach, it is mentioned that we should always quote the example of the previous acharyas. Prabhupada has given so much of stories, so much of analogies and examples. That's what we have seen. Always Harivilas would quote so many stories. Sometimes all the stories are coming from actually Srila Prabhupada. And I had seen like all the devotees, most of them, they quote stories of Srila Prabhupada and the previous acharyas. We should stick with disciplic succession. Sometimes because of our association with material energy, sometimes we also try to speculate. We try to come up with our own examples. Sometimes it might be right, sometimes it might be wrong, because it is based on mental speculation. Hence, we should stick with the disciplic succession. So, example, Vidura inquires from Madhava about Paramam Sthitam, as told by the Lord. What is Paramam Sthitam? The knowledge of the self. Inquire from anyone who is a devotee, irrespective of age. As long as the devotee is connected and bona fide to Sampradaya, he is a devotee, practicing devotee, you might have Atma Tattva, you might have more knowledge than you. You might be junior in age. You should not have any consideration. We should request knowledge, ask him to talk about Krishna. There is nothing wrong. So, example, Vidura here inquires from Uddhava, who is younger. So, next verse, Uddhava follows techniques of transcendental science. This is the context. What does Uddhava says? Shri Uddhava said, you may take the lessons from the great learned sage Maitreya, who is nearby and who is worshipable for reception of transcendental knowledge. He was directly instructed by the personality of Godhead while he was about to quit this mortal world. He said, the Atma Tattva knowledge you are asking, I cannot give you, because more qualified person is around. So you should approach him. You should use worshipable personality, because he directly received the knowledge from Maitreya, from Lord itself. Maitreya Muni directly received knowledge from the Lord. So he is a bona fide sampradaya. He is bona fide. So in sense, you can approach him. Prabhupada tells the importance of Maryada Vyatikrama. Although one may be well versed in the transcendental science, one should be careful about the offense of Maryada Vyatikrama, or impudently surpassing a greater personality. When a senior is there, etiquette is that we should request the senior to speak. Even though you might know more than the senior, you might think that you might know more than the senior, but we should always follow the etiquette. What happens if you don't follow the etiquette? Prabhupada tells, the result of transgressing Maryada Vyatikrama, one loses his duration of life, his opulence, fame, and piety, and the blessings of all the world. Somebody, when they transgress this rule of Maryada Vyatikrama, so these are the side effects, Prabhupada quotes. Lesson: to be well versed in the transcendental science necessitates awareness of the techniques of spiritual science. What are the techniques of spiritual science? There are various etiquettes are mentioned. One of them is, you should not be speaking in front of seniors without their permission, without seeking permission from them. Next, Prabhupada tells Uddhava did not accept the position of a spiritual master in the presence of the Maitreya, because Maitreya is senior who is nearby. Hence, he doesn't want to accept Vidra as his disciple, even though he is qualified. And then also he considered that Vidra also senior in age. He's like almost my father. It's not proper for me to etiquette on Atma Tattva, about Atma Tattva to him. You should approach Maitreya Muni. These are the etiquettes. The rule is that in the presence of a higher personality, one should not be very eager to impart instruction, even if one is competent and well versed. Even though he might be well versed and competent, you should not become like that. So Maitreya had the first climb. Maitreya had both Uddhava and Maitreya were directly instructed by the Lord. But Maitreya, being elderly, had the first climb to become the spiritual master, especially for Vidra, who was much older than Uddhava. This is how Uddhava considered. He was not just trying to bounce around Vidra to somewhere else. Based on etiquette, based on techniques of spiritual science, he is telling what is appropriate to the situation. Lesson: one should not eager to become a spiritual master cheaply for the sake of profit and fame, but should become a spiritual master only for the service of the Lord. Taking a position of a spiritual master, whether Diksha Guru or a Shiksha Guru, right? And in whatever way we all actually act as a Shiksha Guru. We are representing Srila Prabhupada. So we should be doing for the sake of advancement of the living entity towards Krishna as a service to Krishna. That should be our mindset, that should be our attitude. Again, another lesson Prabhupada tells, impedance on the part of pseudo spiritual master is very risky to progressive spiritual realization. Actually, by taking up this role of a spiritual master, if you don't do it properly, it's a very risky business to your own spiritual advancement. The next verse, observed in discussion led to visualization of Lord's form everywhere. The conversation after Uddhava says that you should approach Maitreya Muni, but they still talk about Krishna's pastimes. That's what it said. Sukadeva Goswami said, O king, after thus discussing with Vidura the transcendental name, fame, qualities, etc. on the bank of Yamuna, Uddhava was overwhelmed with great affliction. He passed the night as if it were a moment, and thereafter he went away. So here, when they talked about Krishna's name, form, qualities and pastimes, Nama, Rupa, Guna, Leela. When we talk about Nama, when we sincerely hear the Nama, what happens? The Rupa is revealed. When we are more advanced, his Guna is revealed, and then his Leela is revealed, which is natural. It is not mental concoction, because Krishna is there, all pervading, everywhere. So, yes, advanced devotee, when he talks about Krishna's name, automatically the Nama, Rupa, Guna, Leela is revealed. So they were able to see Krishna, they were able to visualize the pastimes of Krishna when they are talking all night. The important points from purports. Discussion led to visualization. The more they discussed transcendental name, fame, and qualities of the Lord, the more picture of the Lord became visible to them everywhere. Prabhupada quotes. They more talked about Krishna's name, form, and qualities and pastimes. The picture of Krishna, picture of the Lord became visible to them everywhere. They are able to see Krishna everywhere. Visualization was neither false. Visualization of the transcendental form of the Lord is neither false nor imaginary, but is factual, absolute truth. Prabhupada calls. If you are in an advanced situation, just by chanting Krishna's name, right? Rupa, Guna, Leela, they will be revealed. They are not actually fictitious. They are real. They are absolute truth. Importance of Vishwamurti, Prabhupada talks about, it implies it is not that he loses his personality of a transcendental eternal form, but he becomes visible in the same form everywhere. Just because Krishna is available to his form everywhere, all pervading, it doesn't mean that he loses his original form. He's not diminished. So it is bona fide. Banaswami Maharaj actually quotes in the purport to in Srimad Bhagavatam. He gives the translation and purport of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur on Srimad Bhagavatam. In that he says, he remained for the night which passed like a moment. Whole night, Vidura and Uddhava were talking about Nama, Rupa, Guna, Leela. But it went just like a moment. Sometimes when we talk about something is very engrossing, sometimes even mundane subjects, right? Time flies by, right? So what to speak of the highest form of knowledge, highest form of the self-interest of the living entity? That is pastimes of Krishna. When you talk about Krishna's pastimes and his activities, right, the glories of Krishna, so sometimes time actually for pure devotees, it flies like a moment. Whole night went like a moment. Uddhava is a descendant of uh, Aupagava, and is thus called Aupagava. In this verse, previously in the verse, actually it's he called as Aupagavir, right? So actually that's why he is addressed as Aupagavir, Vidra. He left the next morning. Maharaj Parikshit inquires the reason for Uddhava's remaining alone on this planet after disappearance of Lord Shri Krishna, Vrishni and Bhoja dynasties. This is the next section, 28 to 32. So the king inquired at the end of pastimes of the Lord of the three worlds, Shri Krishna, and after the disappearance of the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasties, who were the best of the great commanders, why did Uddhava alone remain? Right? Parikshit Maharaj is asking Sukadeva Goswami, why did Uddhava stay back? Right? So here Prabhupada talks about the importance of word Nidhanam. He gives the reference to Jiva Goswami. It means the transcendental abode of the Lord. The word Nidhanam mentioned in the verse is that it's transcendental abode of the Lord. The Lord and his associates left to the transcendental abode of the Lord. But why did Uddhava stay back? And the Ni means the highest, Dana means opulence. The real purpose of the word Nidhanam is to indicate that all the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasty were direct associates of the Lord, and after the end of his pastimes, all the associates were dispatched to the respective positions in the transcendental abode. So the importance of the word Akritim. The word Akritim is also used here. Prabhupada gives the reference to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura. The meaning of Akritim, A means complete, and A means complete. Akritim means transcendental pastimes. The purpose of this word is since the Lord is identical with his transcendental body, there is no question of his changing or quitting his body. Right? When Lord left the abode, right? Did he leave? What did he leave? Right? That's the question. People have this question. People think that people who are not devotees, they think that Krishna left his body like a mundane person. Hence, he is also not an ordinary living entity. They think. Prabhupada actually explains. We are going to learn more about what did Krishna live. Do you ever asked this question? Why did Krishna live when he left?
There's some discussion Radha Krishna Prabhu was having. He was telling something. You go.
So that those things are coming in this verse.
Explain.
For me also, I was eager. Some people ask this question. Krishna left his body. What happened after that? What happened? What happened? This question was there. For me, actually, when I was going through these verses, like Prabhupada actually elaborates and Bhagavatam also elaborates. The importance of it, Upagadashu. All the members of Vrishni and Bhojanan directly reach the abode of the Lord. They are not actually like ordinary living entities. They are all eternal associates of the Lord. Because they had no attraction to material planets. Next verse, Sukadeva Goswami, in reply to Maharaj Parikshit, considers the Lord's supreme desire as the ultimate cause. The response of Sukadeva Goswami is that Sukadeva Goswami replied, my dear king, the cursing of the Brahmanas was only a plea. But the actual fact was that supreme desire of the Lord. He wanted to disappear from the face of the earth after dispatching his excessively numerous family members. He thought to himself as follows. Again, this verse is divided into two. This translation itself is divided into two parts. Actually, there are 2 points. First part says the Lord used cursing of Brahmanas as a plea. He has used as a means. But ultimately, the Lord wanted to live. That was the reason. Right? He wanted to disappear from the face of the earth after dispatching his excessively numerous family members. He thought to himself as follows. Right? That's what it's going to continue. Prabhupada gives the importance of the word Tyaksham, signifies the subject of the Lord's leaving this body. The word Tyakshan means the past time connected to Lord leaving his body. So that's what it means. This word means the Lord left his Virata Rupa, not his original eternal form. When Krishna left his body, what did he leave? He did not leave his transcendental body. He left his Virata Rupa. We know that Virata Rupa is material. He left his Virata Rupa. And one part of Krishna as Narayana went to Vaikuntha. One part of Krishna along with Arjuna went to Badrikashrama as Narayana Rishi. And the Supreme Lord himself, personally, he went back to Goloka. So that's what we have to understand. He left his gigantic universal form called Virata Rupa, not his primeval eternal form, because there is hardly any possibility of his changing his form of Sachidananda. because his body is transcendental Sachidananda. Right? He is not going to leave his body of transcendental body. What he left is the Virat Rupa, which is material. Why he leaves? Only devotees can understand this simple fact. The status of non-devotees, either they do not understand this simple fact or purposefully raise a controversy to defeat the eternity of the transcendental body of the Lord. For that purpose only Krishna left his Virat Rupa. For the atheist and for the non-believers, let them continue to go non-believing, not believing in the transcendental nature of the Lord. Because he doesn't want to disturb them. You don't want to believe in? That's fine, I will facilitate it, that also. Right? Because he doesn't want to force himself upon everybody. If Krishna does not give this choice, he did not leave his Virat Rupa here, right? Now the non-devotees don't have any argument. They can't make any argument. They can't continue in this work. They got to accept the authority of Bhagavatam. For that purpose, Krishna left his Virat Rupa. The cause of abstinency of non-devotee is, this is due to the defect called the cheating propensity of the imperfect living entities, right? One of the propensity of the conditioned living entity is cheating propensity, right? First is, we have imperfect senses. Because of that, we come under illusion. When we come under illusion, we commit mistake. To hide the mistake, we cheat. These are the 4 limitations of any conditioned living entity in this world. The practical experience of how Lord reveals only to devotees. Example, the deities worshipped in the temple as non-different from the Lord. For devotees who can understand the transcendental nature of the Lord, right? Lord reciprocates even through the deity. They understand that deity is non-different than Krishna because they have faith. It is based on the inconceivable performance of Lord's internal potency, right? How the deity is non-different than Krishna? Because of Krishna's inconceivable internal potency. He can be there, the deity as well. If Krishna created everything, which including matter, why can't he can't come and reside in the matter as well in his transcendental form? Why he can't be there? Prabhupada gives that argument, right? So he can be in deity also. So for that there is a process. The acharyas had given a process. So when even though the deity is made up of stone, metal, paint, or different forms, which is made up of matter, when a proper process is followed, when the Lord is invited to come and reside in that material entity, the Lord comes and resides in his transcendental form. Even though that is material energy, it gets transformed into transcendental superior energy. The verse to support that Lord reveals by devotion. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells that actually he does not reveal himself to foolish people. Right? 725. Nagam prakasha sarvasi yogamaya. I am covered by my internal potency. For foolish people, I am not visible to them. I am covered by my yogamaya or yogamaya potency. In Padma Purana also, Prabhupada quotes, Ata Shri Krishna Namadi Nambhavet Grahim Indriyakaya. One cannot understand the transcendental nature of Krishna's name, form, qualities and pastimes when our senses are not purified. Through our mundane senses, one cannot understand Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's activities. Until our senses are purified, one cannot understand Krishna's name, form, qualities and pastimes. The Lord putting his Virat Rupa is explained by the concept of subject and adjective. Prabhupada quotes. I was trying to do some research. Prabhupada gives this grammar. I didn't understand what is subject and what is objective. We all know what is subject. What is adjective in grammar? You know what's an adjective?
Which explains some properties
Describes the
of that.
subject.
Some describes additional things
Additional
in the sentence. It could be about subject. It should be about object also. Additional words which elaborates the qualities of the subject or object. That's called adjective. So Prabhupada gives an example, right? Generally, sometimes an adjective is used on a subject. When that adjective is removed from the subject does not lose its identity. For example, right? Tall professor. The word the tall professor is used. The tall is an adjective. Even if you remove the tall, still professor is a professor, the subject is not changed. So similarly, Prabhupada gives Krishna, he left his Virat Rupa, he left his adjective, but still he is unaffected. He still stayed in his original form. So that's the analogy Prabhupada gives. Next verse. The Lord considers Uddhava's role after his disappearance, right? This is what actually like Sukadeva Goswami is responding, like to the question of Parishit Maharaj. Why did Uddhava leave? Right? He is telling Krishna left because he decided so, using Brahmana's curse as a plea. Because Brahmanas, what is this pastime? Brahmanas cursed all the Vrishnish, right? Who cursed this Vrishnish? So they all like one time like they were all little making fun of somebody, right? They put some hidden samba. He put this like the iron bar and then his thing, and he dressed like a woman, and then he came in front of a sage. Which
Sorry,
sage?
he didn't put iron bar. He put something to look like a pregnant woman.
Pregnant woman. No, that is it's considered to be. It's not iron bar. It's something made of iron.
It's like a metal only.
It's a metal only.
Metal only, yeah.
It's a metal only. And then who is the sage who curses? Forgot.
No, really, there's a name.
Yeah, that's the name.
Oh,
Nichigo.
Actually, the Brahma.
So he curses that this will become the cause of your entire dynasty, destruction of the
So be it.
dynasty. So be it, you will say. And then they don't know what to do. They go to who to?
Ugrasena.
Ugrasena. What to do? And then they say, okay, grind this up and put it in the ocean.
When the fish comes.
So and then fish eats, that becomes the arrow which goes to the fisherman. And then all the small particles of iron,
They
grow as a weed, as a grass in the seashore of Prabhasha Kshetra. So that's where they assemble there, and then they do all this worship, and then they drink the wine made up of rice, and then they take each other, they speak harsh word to each other, and then they pick up this grass, and then using the grass they fight each other and they destroy each other. So this whole thing is a curse, but this whole curse is Krishna's arrangement because he decided to leave this world, wind up his pastimes, and he also wanted to take all his dynasty associates out of this world. Hence, the whole thing is an arrangement. That is the reason why this whole thing is set up. So he quotes that, and then next he says, "Now I shall leave this vision of this mundane world, and I see that Uddhava, the foremost of my devotees, is the only one who can be directly interested with knowledge about me." Krishna now, he decided to leave this world, and then he thinks that I decided to leave this world. Now somebody has to represent me. So Uddhava is the right person. Because he is not Krishna. Next verse he is going to tell who he is. He gives the qualities of Uddhava, why he is qualified person. Right now, I shall leave this vision of this mundane world, and I see that Uddhava, the foremost of my devotees, is the only one who can be directly interested in the knowledge about me. The important points from this purport: Jnanam Madashriyam indicates topmost knowledge of personality of Godhead. Bhagavata Tattva Vijnana, right? Out of 3 departments of knowledge, only by devotion one can realize the topmost knowledge of the personality of Godhead, and Uddhava is the foremost of all the devotees. What are the 3 departments of knowledge?
no.
Jnana.
Jnana.
3 departments of knowledge. Srimad
Brahman,
Bhagavatam.
Paramatma.
Yeah. Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan.
Prabhu, I say Satchidananda also.
You said? Sorry?
Sachidananda.
Absolute truth, 3 names.
Brahman, Paramatma,
Huh?
Bhagavan. She's saying Sachidananda.
I didn't hear so.
Satchita.
So, because it is the 3 departments of knowledge about the absolute truth is Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. The highest is Bhagavan. Bhagavan knowledge can be only realized. The Brahman part can be realized by Jnanis, right? Paramatma part can be realized by yogis, but Bhagavan part can be only realized by devotees. So that's what it means. Jnanam Madashrayam, right? That is Bhagavata Tattva Vijnana. That's knowledge about Bhagavan. That can be only understood by devotees, and Uddhava is the foremost among all the devotees. The transcendently advanced devotee can get direct inspiration from the temple deities. Therefore, Uddhava went to Naranarayana deity. It is proper tells like an advanced devotee can get reciprocation, can make transcendently advanced devotee can get direct inspiration from the deity. Even though Krishna is not there personally, the deity is non-different than Krishna. He can get inspiration by looking at the deities. So that's why he went to Badrikashrama to see Naranarayana deity. That's what Prabhupada is telling. Why he went to also to Badrikashrama.
Narayana is present in his form. What is deity?
In deity form is there in Badrikashrama. He is there eternally also. But in deity form they were visible to ordinary living entities. Lesson: one who is transcendently advanced can gain direct inspiration from a temple deity, and thus a devotee of the Lord always takes shelter of a recognized temple of the Lord in order to make tangible advancement in transcendental knowledge by the grace of the Lord. Now we understand why Prabhupada established temples all over the world. Because that is the process, right? By coming to a bona fide temple, by taking shelter of the deities in the temple, one make significant advancement in the spiritual life. Why we should come regularly to temple? right? Even a practicing devotee, neophyte devotee, even a so-called devotee, anybody should come to temple. We should be always engaged in service of the deities of the temple. Uddhava qualifies as a perfect representative. Krishna tells, Uddhava is not inferior to me in any way because he is never affected by the modes of material nature. Therefore, he may remain in this world in order to disseminate specific knowledge of the personality of Godhead. Krishna tells he is not different than me. Uddhava also looks like Krishna, by the way. Uddhava, right? Forms also exactly like Krishna. He looks like very like Krishna. His body is also like same dark color as Krishna. He looks very much like Krishna. So he says, you are the right person. He tells, he specifically asked him to go to Padrikashrama. The purport is explained. Again, this translation is divided into two sections. Unaffected by the modes. Uddhava is not inferior to me in any way because he is never affected by the modes of material nature. And then Krishna appoints Uddhava as his representative. Right? Therefore, he may remain in this world in order to disseminate specific knowledge of the personality of Godhead. Qualification for becoming Lord's representative is Prabhupada quotes. The specific qualification for becoming the representative of the Lord is to be unaffected by the material modes of nature. If you want to represent Krishna as a spiritual master, what is the qualification? You should be above the three modes. You should not be affected by the three modes. That is why, right, Rupa Goswami in Upadeshamrita, first verse, he tells, Vacho Vegam Manasakode Vegam, right? Exactly. He tells, like, one should be able to control the urges, because these urges are nothing but manifestation of material energy. They are affected by three modes of material nature. If one cannot control these things, that means he is affected by three modes of material nature. He cannot be representative of Krishna. Prabhupada says, what is the qualification? Brahmana is in the mode of goodness, but one should be in Shuddha Sattva or Vasudeva stage to realize the signs of God. Brahmana can be a guru for people who are in the lower modes, for a Kshatriya or for a Vaishnava, for a Vaishya or for a Shudra. But Brahmana is not just a qualification to disseminate signs of God. One has to be a Vaishnava. Hence, Vaishnava's position is superior. Right? Primary qualification to be one with the Lord is not being affected by the three modes of material nature. Another reference Prabhupada gives, such a person is called Jivan Mukta, already liberated. Right? What is that verse? Ihayasya Harer Dashya. Right? Karmana Manasagira, Niklas Papavasteshu, Jivan Mukta Sauchyate. Right? That is the qualification. One should be liberated from the material energy. That is the qualification required to represent Krishna. Transcendental position of such a devotee is practically visible. Such a devotee of the Lord is never affected by material strength, intelligence, or even renunciation. Such a devotee of the Lord can withstand and all onslaughts of material nature, and therefore he is known as Goswami. Right? We can understand, right, how Prabhupada was going through so much of difficulties, but Prabhupada was never disturbed, never actually deterred from his determination to serve Krishna. Right? In the winter of 1965, when Prabhupada was thrown out of the apartment, right? When that guy tried to kill Prabhupada, he was thrown out of the apartment. He did not have any possession. He didn't have anything. He was standing on the streets of New York in the winter. New York winter, a 70-year-old elderly gentleman, right? He didn't have anybody to stand. He was standing in, you know how cold it is like in winter in New York? Extremely cold. In Seattle itself, it's very difficult. In the night, he was standing there. He had the opportunity. He had the ticket, return ticket in Jaladuta. He can go back to Vrindavan, his home, his abode. He could have gone back. But Prabhupada at the time thought, Krishna, I know what you are going to do. I know what exactly you are doing. Because you are making me to completely surrender to you. I know one day you will remove all my material dependencies. I know you will remove. Once anybody surrenders to you, one day you will remove all the material dependence. I did not know that you will remove this way. Now I am completely determined. He actually thinks like Narada Muni. And now I am completely determined. I am not going to give up. Now I don't give any other shelter than you. He takes complete shelter of Krishna. I am not going to give up your service. I am determined to serve you. I know exactly what position you are putting in me. You are putting me in complete dependence on you. I am dependent on you. Then nothing else. From that point onwards, what happens? Until then, Prabhupada gone through so much of difficulty. After that, That is the lowest point in terms of material dependency for Prabhupada. Everything is gone, you are in a foreign place. Before Prabhupada tried his business, that business failed. Right? Then Prabhupada took sannyas. He did translated Srimad Bhagavatam, running around all over the country to translate, to preach. Nothing was working. And then he came to America and Jaladutta. He had like 2 heart attacks. Right? He was completely dependent on Krishna. When he was landing in Boston, he was even writing a poem to Krishna. Why you brought me, I don't know. He was completely dependent on Krishna. But even then, there is some shelter was there for Prabhupada. At that time, in 1965, in winter of 1965, Prabhupada did not have anybody. Think about it. Can you even imagine? You are standing in a dark alley in New York, in cold. You don't have anything else. You don't even have your passport. You don't have nothing. No possession. Prabhupada actually was meditating on Krishna. I know what exactly you're doing. From that point onwards, after that, what he meets? He meets Michael Grant, right? Mukunda Goswami. He goes and then they make him to stay in Prabhupada's house. Then from now, after that only Prabhupada forms ISKCON. He registers ISKCON. He forms the society. They rent a storefront. The whole from that point onwards, Krishna, Prabhupada understood. Krishna, I am completely dependent on you. I don't have any other dependency now. From that point onwards, Krishna reciprocated fully to Prabhupada's will to serve Krishna. Right?
But this is a Leela.
Yeah, it is there.
No, I mean, this is a Leela.
Yeah.
It's not that.
Sorry.
I mean, for us, it is an example.
Yes.
Prabhupada didn't have to go through.
Prabhupada did not have. Absolutely, you are right. Prabhupada is a pure devotee. This is for us to learn how one should depend on Krishna. We should. Mother, thank you for bringing it out.
You meant it.
No. Thank you for bringing it out because it's a very important point. We should not think that Krishna, Prabhupada is also an ordinary devotee who is going through purification. No. For this, the important thing for this is for us to learn is that how a devotee goes through purification. Krishna used Prabhupada, but Prabhupada is a pure devotee. It's an eternal associate of the Lord. There is no doubt about that. But it's an example it is given. Prabhupada, the devotee, Krishna always teaches through his devotees. Right? The process of devotional service. Right? Uddhava followed the instruction and reached the Badrikashrama. Right? Sukadeva Goswami informed the king that Uddhava, being thus instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the source of all Vedic knowledge and the spiritual master of the 3 worlds, reached the pilgrimage site of Badrikashrama and engaged himself therein trance to satisfy the Lord. Right? The position of the Lord is mentioned in this verse, and then also understanding him by following his instruction. The position of the Lord is that he is the one, Krishna is the one who disseminates all the Vedic knowledge. He is the author of all the Vedic knowledge. That means he knows more than Vedas. He is the author of all the Vedas. That means he knows more than the Vedas. If somebody writes a book, that doesn't mean that I don't know what beyond that book, I don't know anything else. Because if I am able to write that book, that means I have more knowledge than that book. Because Krishna had disseminated Vedas, that means he knows more than the Vedas. Some of the things may not be taught in Vedas. Whatever that confidential knowledge, whatever Vedas does not teach, that's what Krishna personally taught to Uddhava. That's what Vishnu Chakravarti goes. That confidential message is the one Lord Krishna wanted Uddhava to take to Badrikashrama for all the sages. Right? Uddhava understood the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the source of all Vedas, by Lord's grace and instruction. How Uddhava is able to understand Lord's position? By his grace and by following his instruction. That is why he wanted to execute Lord's instruction. Very difficult to understand the personal feature of the absolute truth, even from the Vedas. One cannot understand by studying Vedas. One cannot understand Krishna's personal form. Krishna also tells, right? Not by studying Vedas, not by conducting yajna, not by this, not by. You cannot understand me. Only by devotional service you can understand me as I am standing before you. Right? The Lord spoke to Uddhava to the complete transcendental knowledge of Bhagavad Gita spoken to Arjuna and to disseminate that knowledge. Prabhupada tells, Lord's mercy on the sages of Badrikashrama told Uddhava to go to and speak to them on his behalf. Krishna went all over the world. He went everywhere, right? He went to various holy places. Krishna even went to Sarvaloka to get Parijata flower. Krishna went to lower planets to retrieve the son of his Guru Sandipani Muni. He even went beyond this material realm to get the son of the Brahmana. He went all over the place. He gave his mercy in personal form to everywhere. But he did not go to Badrikashrama. But he knows that in Badrikashrama all the great sages are there to give his mercy, because Krishna did not go personally. Krishna thought that Uddhava is not different than me. He gave the message. You take this confidential message to the sages in Badrikashrama. The message of the Lord to Uddhava was very confidential, meant for the sages and for the Naranarayana deities. The Prabhupada says the lesson every living entity can, like Uddhava, also become a confidential message of the same level as the Lord, provided he becomes confidential himself by dint of his devotional service. Everybody can become confidential message, carrier of the message, a confidential message of the Lord. What is the qualification? One should become confidential first. One should become a confidential servant of the Lord to carry the confidential message of the Lord. So how one can attain the confidential position of the Lord? By doing devotional service. Expected message delivered by Uddhava. This is actually Prabhupada quotes. This is from Vishwanath Chakravarti. There. What is the message Krishna sent? Even though it is not there in Bhagavatam, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur tells. Prabhupada quotes that. About the uncommon activities performed by the Lord on the earth, about conditions of life on other planets, must have concerned the mystery of his departure and the uncleanness of his dynasty after the end of his appearance in the mundane world for 100 years. These are the kind of messages Uddhava might have taken. That's what Prabhupada quotes from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. I don't know how Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes, because he is like a Rasacharya, right? He knows what's going on between Krishna and his devotees. So he speaks what's going on inside the mind of Krishna and his devotees during the conversation. So we don't understand how Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur speaks, because he's a confidential associate of the Lord. He's an advanced devotee, so he can reveal all these things. So we don't understand. So Vidura also heard about the inconceivable signs of the Lord from Uddhava. Vidura also heard from Uddhava about the appearance and disappearance of the Lord Krishna, the super soul in the mortal world, which is a subject matter sought after with great perseverance by the great sages. It's not that Uddhava did not speak anything to Vidura at all, because they talked all night about Namarupa Guna Lila. So the Lord's appearance appears ordinary, that is, right, Paramatma misunderstood as Atma. When Lord appears in this world, right, people saying that Paramatma have taken ordinary form, like an Atma, they say. But no, Paramatma is always Paramatma, right? His appearance as one of the human beings and his disappearance again from the mortal world are subject matters for the research workers who execute research work with great perseverance. These topics are actually research work of the devotees. Mysterious subject matter to understand. That appearance and disappearance of Lord Krishna, the super soul in the mortal world, which is a subject matter sought after with great. I don't know why I repeated the same thing again here. So no information, right? Even great sages have no information of spiritual sky and Lord's central abode beyond material sky, right? Until we study Srimad Bhagavatam, until we study Bhagavad Gita, we cannot understand the spiritual sky and the spiritual form, personal form of the Lord. All these Vedas predominantly deal with only three modes of material nature. Some aspect of Vedas, the conclusion of Vedas in the form of Upanishads, might talk about Brahman. But all these things studies may not lead one to personal understanding of Krishna as Bhagavan. That can be only understood when we read Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam under the guidance of devotees. Otherwise, even Bhagavad Gita can be misunderstood. Bhagavatam can, even the Mayavadis read Bhagavatam also. Even though Shankaracharya did not touch Bhagavatam, but later Mayavadi started touching Bhagavatam also. Right? So they talk, even though you wrote Sharirika Bhashya without referring to Srimad Bhagavatam, right? He never touched Srimad Bhagavatam, Shankaracharya, because he knows that Srimad Bhagavatam is body of Krishna. He cannot touch that. He doesn't want to touch it. He left it alone. But later, the Mayavadis, descendants of Shankaracharya, they start talking like reciting Bhagavatam also. They give Mayavadic interpretation and Srimad Bhagavatam also. Inconceivable potency is that difficult to understand Lord's inconceivable potency by which he resides in his eternal abode, Goloka, yet at the same time, as the super soul, he is present everywhere, in both spiritual and material skies, by his multi-varieties of manifestation. This is the inconceivable Achintya Shakti of Krishna. The Achintya Shakti of the Lord is that how he is simultaneously there everywhere. We cannot understand. A conditioned living entity, even a liberated living entity cannot understand that how Krishna is there everywhere, because that is his inconceivable potency. He is infinite. He can be there simultaneously everywhere without diminishing any of the form. All of them are identical. This is inconceivable for a limited living entity. So it is inconceivable. Achintya Shakti cannot ascertain the beginning or end. His appearance and disappearance are simultaneously going on, and no one can say definitely which of the form, which of them is the beginning and which is the end. It cannot be understood easily. Which is the beginning, which is the end. All these multivarious forms, one cannot understand which is beginning, which is end. Right? Learn from pure devotees. No need of research. Prabhupada in the end says, all this research work people are doing, there is no need of any research work. Talk to devotees. They understand the highest truth. There is no need to do any separate research. If you have to do any research at all, you do research on the previous acharya's work to understand how it is to be understood. There is no need to go and mentally speculate anything else. Non-devotees can never understand these pastimes. The Lord's glorious acts and his acceptance of various transcendental forms for the performance of extraordinary pastimes in the model world are very difficult for anyone other than his devotees to understand. Who is telling? Shukadeva Goswami is telling. Yeah. And for the beasts, they are simply mental disturbance. This is what Shukadeva Goswami is telling. Right? Transcendental subjects are difficult to understand by the following: Jnanis and Yogis, those enemies of the Lord, classified as here as beasts. Those simply concerned with material enjoyment, beasts of burden. These are the peoples cannot understand transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Result of speculating on transcendental subjects by the above mentioned people, what happens? They simply create mental disturbance in the society. Non-devotees commit further offences at the lotus feet of the Lord, like Mayavadis, enter into the darkest region of hell. Right? Bhagavad Gita Krishna tells 16:20, right? These demons are actually eternally condemned in lower and lower species of life. They keep going lower and lower because of our offensive nature towards the Lord. I'm going to, 2 more verses left. I will just wrap up. So Vidura cried out of gratitude for the Lord's mercy received. Right? Because he received mercy of Krishna through Uddhava, and Uddhava tells that how Krishna, when he was leaving this planet, he remembered Uddhava. We remembered Vidura. Right? Understanding that he was remembered by Lord Krishna while quitting this world, Vidura began to cry loudly, overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love. He thought, I am so insignificant. I am an ordinary living entity. The Lord remembered me. When Uddhava said that, Lord remembered Vidura, he remembered about you as well. Vidura was overwhelmed. I am so insignificant. What is there for me to remember, Lord? But out of his kindness, the Lord remembered me. He was not able to actually hold his cry. Prabhupada tells this cry, sincere cry, is the last word in devotional service. Prabhupada tells, right? This crying is the last word in the progressive path of devotional service. One who can cry for the Lord in love is certainly successful in the line of devotional service. So the same topic one time, Maharaj also told me this. Sincere crying for the Lord. If our tears are sincere, that will become the foundation to the creeper of bhakti. Heartfelt tears are the foundation to the creeper of bhakti. Maharaj once mentioned this point. So sincere cry, not like a crocodile tears like mine. I also cry all the time. So for anything I can also cry because I know how to cry. That's crocodile tears, but it has to be sincere, heartfelt, not crocodile cries, crocodile tears, right? So this is the last verse. There is no purport to this, just the translation. Journey from Yamuna to Ganges, right? Again, like Sukadeva Goswami describes, after passing a few days on the bank of river Yamuna, Vidura, the self-realized soul, reached the bank of Ganges, where the great sage Maitreya was situated. So this is the journey of Vidura. From Yamuna, he meets with, in the bank of Yamuna, he meets with Uddhava, and they spend the whole night talking about Krishna, and he is overwhelmed by mercy of Krishna. With that heart, he approaches now Maitreya Muni. From the bank of river Yamuna to, he goes to bank of river Ganges. So thus ends this section of the verses. So as I mentioned, this contains 4 sections. Verses 23 to 25, Vidura seeks spiritual knowledge. Overwhelmed Uddhava follows perfect etiquettes of spiritual science. Verse 26 to 27. 28 to 32 is Uddhava's special role after the disappearance of the Lord. And then verse 33 to 36 is Vidura's enlightenment by Uddhava and further journey of Vidura. So this ends the chapter 4. entitled Vidura approaches Maitreya. So next chapter 5 is that after he going and meeting with Maitreya Muni, and he further inquires, and there is a conversation between Maitreya Muni and Vidura will proceed in following chapters. So we'll stop here. Any discussions points? I took like 15 minutes, 20 minutes more than allotted time. I'm sorry. I try to go as fast as possible. Yeah?
Especially for a minute is like an hour. It's not the other way.
So, because I'm not pure, that's what it means.
No, because of
I
For
understand.
us, Prabhu.
I understand. I know.
For a
But that is
for a sincere
what to do. That is